realize the atheists don't really have good arguments. And in my experience anyway, I don't think atheists have good arguments. What I think they have are complaints about the way God's running the universe. Why didn't God do this? Why didn't God do that? Why does God allow evil to occur and this to happen and that to happen? Those are complaints. They're not arguments against God. They're just complaints about the way God's running the universe.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Patrick.
When tragedy strikes or life's hardships overwhelm us,
how are you?
Pretty good.
how do we hold
Great.
on to faith in God?
So
That's the heartfelt
your
question
argument and
posed by
everything.
this student, and Dr. Frank Turek offers a compelling response,
have you ever been stumped
exploring the
before?
philosophical
Every
and personal
day,
aspects
my
of
wife
trusting
asks me
God
questions
in the
I don't
face
know
of
how to
suffering.
answer.
Let's dive into this
With this
crucial
particular
conversation.
argument, have you ever?
Great. Yes, sir. What's your name?
I'm Patrick.
Patrick, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Great, thanks.
So I liked your argument and everything. I have. What have you ever been stumped before? If so,
Every day, my wife asks me questions I don't know how to answer.
with this particular argument, have you ever been stumped?
Well, sure, there's
by some
things-
of the people you debated.
Yeah, nobody knows everything, quite obviously, except sometimes when I get a question I don't know how to answer, I say, you should have asked me that question when I was 17. I knew everything when I was 17. No, there are mysteries we don't know. To be honest, I think the hardest question for Christians to answer is why does God allow certain evils? As I said earlier, it doesn't disprove God, but it does call into question, why would you allow this to happen? And I think there's answers to it. For example, there's something known as the ripple effect. You guys know about the ripple effect or the butterfly effect? That every event that occurs ripples forward to affect trillions of other events. So if someone were to come to me and say, why do babies die, for example? I could say, well, I know why babies die in general because we live in a fallen world. But if you're going to ask me, why did that particular baby die? I don't know. But I know why I don't know. I'm finite. I'm inside of time. I can see very little of this world. But God is outside of time. He can see the end from the beginning. Maybe by allowing this baby to die, that event trickles forward or ripples forward to affect trillions of other events, one of which a great evangelist 500 years from now arises and saves millions of people. Can I track all those ripples? No, I can't. But God can. In fact, you even see the ripple effect in the scriptures. Remember when Joseph is sold into slavery by his brothers? One of his brothers, Judah, I mentioned earlier, who is in the ancestry of Christ. They sell him into slavery to Egypt. He gets to Egypt, he's treated so poorly, he's thrown into jail on false charges, but then later he rises to the third level of the third highest administrator in Egypt, and he puts a lot of grain aside for a famine. And when there's a famine in Israel, his family, the same family that sold him into slavery, they come to Egypt, and Joseph recognizes them, and as soon as he sees them, what does Joseph say? You dirty rats, you're going to pay for what you did to me. No, he doesn't say that. What does he say? What you meant for evil, God meant for good, the saving of many lives. Here we see the ripple effect in one story. The people that did evil to Joseph, that evil rippled forward to later help them when they had to escape a famine. A lot of times we can't see the ripple effect, but of course an omnipotent God can. So we trust God knowing that there is an eternity and knowing there is a ripple effect, that when such and such a thing happens and we can't explain it, we know that God has a reason even if we don't have it. Look, a God big enough to stop all evil is also a God big enough to have reasons that we don't know about. So I think that's the hardest thing to answer, but we know why it's hard to answer because we have very limited knowledge.
Right.
How about you? What are the issues that trouble you?
I'd say knowledge is number one. Not knowing how to answer questions and,
yes,
correctly at least.
Well, we're all that way. And so I would just encourage you to just keep studying, keep reading, keep watching, try to learn as much as you can from others. Also read people that disagree with you so you can see where they're coming from. But only do this after you've done enough study on what you do believe.
Right.
You wouldn't want to throw a newbie into, if you're a Christian, you wouldn't want to throw a newbie into an atheist book right away. You'd want to have that new person understand why Christianity is true, and then have them evaluate the arguments of the atheist to see if you can either learn something from the atheist or realize the atheists don't really have good arguments. And in my experience anyway, I don't think atheists have good arguments. What I think they have are complaints about the way God's running the universe. Why didn't God do this? Why didn't God do that? Why does God allow evil to occur and this to happen and that to happen? Those are complaints. They're not arguments against God. They're just complaints about the way God's running the universe.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Patrick.
The problem of evil is one of the most profound challenges to faith, raising questions about God's nature and our purpose in a world filled with suffering. Let's explore how Christianity uniquely addresses this issue and equips believers to trust God, even in the face of injustice or pain. Trusting God amidst suffering begins with understanding His nature. The Bible portrays God as omniscient, Isaiah 55:8-9, and loving, 1 John 4:8. While we may not comprehend the reasons behind specific events, we know God's purposes are ultimately good, Romans 8:28. The story of Joseph, sold into slavery by his brothers, is a powerful example, Genesis 50:20. What seemed like senseless evil led to the saving of many lives during a famine. This illustrates that God's plan is often beyond our immediate understanding, but always aimed at His glory and our ultimate good. Christianity provides a unique answer to the problem of evil through the cross. Jesus, God incarnate, entered human suffering and took the weight of sin upon Himself. Philippians 2:6-8. Unlike other worldviews that may dismiss evil as illusory, for example, some Eastern religions, or inevitable, for example, atheism, Christianity asserts that God is actively addressing evil. Through Christ's resurrection, Christians are promised a future where suffering is eradicated and justice is restored. Revelation 21:4. This hope differentiates Christianity from systems that offer no ultimate resolution to pain. Reconciling faith with suffering requires acknowledging two truths: the world is fallen and God is sovereign. Humanity's free will, given by God for love and moral agency, also allows for sin and its consequences. Genesis 3. However, God does not leave us in despair. The ripple effect, as discussed in the conversation, helps us understand that what seems meaningless now may have eternal significance. For instance, the death of a faithful believer could inspire generations to seek God, much like the ripple effect seen in the lives of biblical figures. The ripple effect demonstrates that God's providence extends beyond our immediate circumstances. Our finite perspective limits our ability to see how present suffering might lead to future good. For example, the early persecution of Christians, though tragic, led to the spread of the gospel across the Roman Empire. Acts 8:1-4. Understanding the ripple effect encourages believers to trust that God's sovereignty is working through both visible and unseen events for His ultimate purposes. Deepen your understanding. Study the Bible, 2 Timothy 3:16-17, and explore apologetic resources to equip yourself with answers to tough questions. Build a community. Surround yourself with mature Christians who can provide support and wisdom during struggles. Engage thoughtfully. When engaging skeptics, listen to their concerns with patience and humility. Share the hope of the gospel with gentleness and respect. 1 Peter 3:15. Pray consistently. Seek God's guidance and strength, particularly when confronted with doubts or challenges. Compassionate engagement begins with empathy. Many skeptics have genuine questions or personal pain underlying their challenges to Christianity. Instead of dismissing their concerns, acknowledge their struggles and share your own experiences of God's grace. Highlight the intellectual and emotional hope found in Christ, emphasizing that Christianity doesn't dismiss evil but provides a redemptive path through it. Show humility, recognizing that faith involves trusting a God whose ways surpass human understanding. Humility is essential for reconciling human limitations with God's infinite wisdom. Job's story offers a profound lesson. Despite his suffering, Job learned to trust God's sovereignty without fully understanding his reasons. Job 38:42. As finite beings, we cannot grasp all of God's purposes, but we can rest in his character. Accepting our limitations encourages trust and dependence on him, rather than insisting on answers we may not yet be ready to understand. The problem of evil is not an abstract theological dilemma, but a deeply personal struggle. Christianity uniquely provides both a philosophical framework and a relational solution. A God who suffers with us and promises redemption. By trusting in God's sovereignty, embracing the ripple effect, and living out our faith with humility and compassion, we can navigate suffering while pointing others to the ultimate hope found in Jesus Christ.